This webinar is brought to you by ACI Learning. Be bold, train smart. Don't forget, in just a few short months, come on out to Hack SpaceCon. Join us April 10th through the 13th in sunny Central Florida at the Kennedy Space Center. And while you're here, check out TechNado, your weekly source for the latest in security news. Join us every Thursday for a brand new episode. Welcome and thanks so much for joining us for this webinar. I'm Sophie Goodwin. I'll be your host and question moderator because we will be doing a Q&A, but I'm not alone here. We all know why you're here. I've got Don Pezet to my right. Don, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I'm always excited to get out and talk to people that are looking to jump into IT. You know, it's been a really rewarding career field for me, and I love sharing what I've learned with everyone else. And if you're not familiar with who I am, I'm Don Pezet. I'm Chief Product Officer for ACI Learning. So I'm the person who puts together a lot of the training programs that we deliver and put out to people like yourself. But before that, I was an edutainer. I was a classroom trainer. I've taught IT for well over a decade, and I've worked in IT for over 25 years. I've have a background in the financial and insurance industries, and I've just done a ton of different things. Co-founded IT Pro TV, and ultimately dropped into where I'm at right now with ACI Learning. And through that time, I've obtained a number of certifications myself. But way back, we go all the way back about 28 years, when I got my first real IT job, I was going through exactly what a lot of you are going through right now, which is, what do I need to get ready to get out there and get a job? How do I get it to where people see my resume and there's something meaningful that's on there? How do I even know what kind of jobs to apply for? These are all questions that I get asked all the time, and I love to talk about them. Sophie, you mentioned doing a Q&A. We absolutely want to encourage people to ask questions, and I've got some things that I can talk about, but I'm really more interested in answering your questions. I want everybody to leave here with an idea of what they need to do to get that new career in the new year.
We kind of have both ends of the spectrum covered here because as you kind of talked about your journey through IT and how you've been in this field for quite a while, and I'm very, very new to this stuff still. I'm only a couple of years in, and I kind of fell into it. And so I'm still learning a lot every day. So I am looking forward to getting to those questions, but I know that we had, I think, some job positions we wanted to talk about, because when we say
Sure.
getting into IT, that could mean a lot of different things. So where do you want to start?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because getting started in IT today is easier in some ways than it used to be, but it's also harder in other ways. So for example, if you go back to like when I got my first IT job, IT was fairly new. Most companies didn't have dedicated IT people. They had like copier repair people and things of that nature. So if you said, I want to get started in IT, people had a very specific vision of what they wanted. But it was all very, very new. So most people had no experience. There wasn't really anything to build on. And so it was tough to get in there. You fast forward to today, where IT is far more mature. Every company has IT workers and usually many different types. That makes it where there's a lot more job opportunity. It's far more easy to find open job postings in IT. But there's a ton of different specializations that are out there. In fact, you can't just say, I work in IT anymore, because that doesn't mean what it used to mean. Like, back in the day, if I said I worked in IT, people said, oh, so you fix computers? I'm having a problem printing. Can you help me with that? You fast forward to today, though, and somebody says, I work in IT. Okay, well, what does that mean? There's any number of careers that fall under the IT umbrella now, and the way that you approach getting your first job in each is going to be different. There's different types of training that's available. There's different degrees, there's experience, and it varies based on what that position is. So I think it's really important people get in that mindset. Now, let's just say for a minute that you've decided you want to get into IT for any number of reasons, right? Everybody has different backgrounds and different reasons. Maybe you just got out of the military and you're jumping into private sector and you want to get started in IT. Maybe you already have a job. You work in construction, and you're tired of being outside. You don't want to sweat anymore, right? I don't blame you on that. So you can jump into IT, and you don't have that problem anymore. We have air conditioning. So whatever your motivation is, you say, I want to get into IT, but what part of IT? What is it exactly you want to do inside of there? And then if you've got no experience, how do you make that up? And so if you've not really dug that deep yet, there's a great place where you can start. And I encourage everyone who's thinking about getting into IT to do this. CompTIA, which is the Computer Technology Industry Association, they have a number of certifications available for various job focuses and specializations. They have one in particular called CompTIA IT Fundamentals. And what IT Fundamentals is designed to do is to help people who are getting into IT to learn about all the different types of jobs that are available. And let me show you here. I'm going to bring up their webpage. So this is CompTIA's webpage. You can go to comptia.org. And when you browse into their certifications, you'll find IT fundamentals in there. And if you take a look at what you'll learn as a part of that certification, so it's got a section here, what skills do you learn? And you'll see 6 things. These all roughly align with the 6 primary job roles that you find in IT. It could be infrastructure. Infrastructure means setting up routers, firewalls, switches, right? The hardware that drives networks, that makes systems connect. When you browse the internet and go to a website, you might pass across 10, 12 different systems. Most of that is infrastructure. Then there's applications and software. This is typically people that are doing desktop support. Your businesses have, well, they call them line of business applications, but software they use to do their job. Somebody's got to keep that up and running, keep it updated. There's software development. These are programmers, developers, engineers. There's a number of different names for it. The people who write the software that we use. Database fundamentals. These are database administrators, people who are building these large collections of data and then running queries to be able to get the data back out. Data is only useful if you have a way to get it back out again, and they have ways to not just get it, but to transform it and filter it to get exactly the information that you want. And then security. That's the big buzzword right now, cybersecurity. It's a huge career field. That's another area. Well, which one is right for you? Maybe all of them. Maybe you don't care. I just love IT. I want to work in any one of these. Or maybe you're leaning one way or another. Maybe you don't know. Going through IT fundamentals lets you learn a little bit about each one and get an idea of which career type you want. And I believe in this certification so much that on ACI Learning with the IT Pro subscription, the CompTIA IT Fundamentals, it's free. You can sign up for a free account today and watch that entire course to get an idea of what it is that you want to do. So that one to me is an extremely important first step for somebody getting into this.
So let's say I go and watch the IT fundamentals course, I get through the whole thing, and I decide I'm really interested in, let's say I want to be in security, I want to be an analyst, but I still don't have any experience. So I probably couldn't jump right into that. Where would be a good place for me to start?
All right. That's a really important thing to understand, right? I can't tell you how many people I've talked to where they say, and it's almost always cybersecurity. They say, I love cybersecurity. I want to be a pen tester. Okay, that's great. There are a lot of pen testing jobs that are out there. If you're not familiar with that title, that's a penetration tester. These are basically hackers that are hired by companies to test their networks. They say, hey, can you break into my network? And if you can, tell us how you did it so we can fix that, right? And these people, they get paid. It's a fun career. It seems really glamorous. There's actually a ton of paperwork to it, like any job. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but it certainly is a growing field. Is very well compensated. I think it's a great goal to become a pen tester. However, that's not going to be your first job. You will not have the experience and knowledge. Companies will not trust you to come and potentially access their sensitive information if you don't have a track record behind you, either certifications or experience, or you work for a company already that has trained you to be able to do this. That's a challenge people have. So when we want to get into a career field like that, we need to understand the pathway that leads there. And your first job will likely not be called a pen tester. It will likely be called something else that leads up to it. And so I'm leveraging a resource here. There's a company called Robert Half. And if you've never heard of Robert Half, they are a staffing agency. If you're looking for a job, I have no connection to Robert Half. Let me state that first. Like, it's not a commissioned commercial or anything. But if you're looking for a job, you give them their resume, and they handle contract positions all over the world. So these guys really know what's out there. They're on top of the jobs that are available. And they put out a study. You can view it online. It's called their salary guide, where you can see the average salaries of positions. And what I did is I ran through their report, and mostly they focus on like the really high paid stuff. So you'll see like CIOs are highly compensated and so on. That's a chief information officer, not your first IT career, right? So I grabbed what I consider some of the introductory career paths, the job titles that you need to be looking for when you go out and search for each of the main groups that are out there. And so let me jump over to a slide that I have here. Help desk and support. For most people getting into IT, this is not just the most logical place to start, it's also usually the easiest place to start, right? In today's world, most of us have grown up with computers. You had a computer when you were a child, you used it all through elementary and high school, and now you're ready to enter into the workforce. You've been working with computers a good bit. And while computers use binary, ones and zeros, right, on and off, true and false, when it comes to software working, it seems like there's this middle gray area, right, where things either work, don't work, or somewhere in between. You've probably experienced problems and you've probably fixed them. If you like IT, the odds are you've been dabbling in it as a hobby and you've experienced this. And help desk and support is a natural extension of what you've already done just through the process of using a computer over a period of time. So these types of roles are great for getting started. Now, first off, they don't require a ton of experience. And so that's nice. If you're just getting started, you don't have a ton of experience. And then second, in that role, you get a ton of experience, right? It's one thing to read a book and learn the way that software is supposed to work. It's a whole different thing to see how that software works out in the real world and all the ways that it's broken or the crazy things end users can do. We could do a whole webinar just on my stories of end user interactions. It's truly bizarre, the things that people come up with. And you learn that working on a help desk or working in support. And so you'll see job postings that are out there like this, like help desk, and usually a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Those are typically pay grades. You go onto the help desk and you're probably working a phone or an online chat or a ticketing system. A ticket comes in, you then work with that person to resolve what their issue is. When you just get started, you'll typically be at tier 1 and then move up. Other companies flip it around where people start at tier 3 and then they get promoted up. It depends. Companies can go either way on that one. But you'll shift between them as your experience grows and your pay grows. Now, if you take a job like that and you want to work help desk your whole life, you can, but that's usually not where people stop their career. Typically, they start working at a help desk and then they start studying for what their specialization is going to be beyond that. Do I want to get into cybersecurity? Do I want to get into networking and infrastructure or whatever? And they study and learn while they're working in this role. Now they've got some experience on their resume. Now they can get some certifications that are a little more specific, or they can go through a university program that's a little more specific, and they can move on to that next career. So this is kind of a first step. And it's what I did. I got started doing help desk work way back. I supported originally like a 9-computer Mac environment. So it was all Apple machines a million years ago, and then progressed into doing networking with Windows servers and Linux. Got heavily involved in Unix in the early days, which really pays off now because you see Linux servers so much. All of that stuff is great to learn, but not necessarily what you're going to do on your very first job.
So what about, I know in some of our courses here, the edutainers will throw out like examples of job titles in scenarios that they give. And one of the ones they mention a lot is a sysadmin. What category would that fall under?
All right. Sysadmin is a little bit different. So again, you can do it, but most people don't start out as a sysadmin, right? When we talk about like help desk and support, we're talking about desktops, laptops, the Windows operating system, Mac OS, end users. When we talk about a sysadmin, now we're talking about servers, right? Servers don't have end users, right? The applications that run on the servers do, and end users connect to those. But now you're focused more on maintaining the hardware and the host operating system, handling updates, backups, restore, disaster recovery, all of those activities that happen on a server. Now, the challenge is higher because of the risk. If I mess up my laptop, Sophie probably doesn't care. Well, she'll probably make fun of me, right? So if I mess up my laptop, though, it's a singular incident that just affects me. But if I mess up a server, who does that affect? Maybe it's an email server with 10,000 users on it. That's who it affects. And if you knock that offline, guess how many people are going to be angry with you? About 10,000. It's not something you want to be in. So that's why I say it's not usually a day one career. But with the proper training, if you go through a university program or you go through a certification path, like the training that we do at ACI Learning, then you can gain the skills to be ready to jump right into a sysadmin type role and start to do that, right? Sysadmins are considered part of operations. Let me bring this up. I got a list of operations job titles that you'll see out there. I keep saying sysadmin, and I naturally think of it, that's the way people refer to it, but it's short for systems administrator. So that's somebody who manages systems, but specifically we're talking about servers, not desktops. You might hear a title called desktop engineer sometimes, but typically that's just desktop support, help desk, like we saw before. Systems administrator, systems engineer, those are the ones that run the servers. Now, you might ask yourself, what's the difference between an administrator and an engineer? And the short answer is typically experience. An engineer is somebody who's been around the block. They've done this a while. If they need to build up a data center from scratch, they've done it. They've been there. They can bring that up, no big deal. Versus a sysadmin is somebody who's coming into an environment that's already built and is ready to support and maintain it, right? Not that one's harder than the other, but one, the engineer side, definitely requires a lot of knowledge that you've gained, the lessons learned of years and years of work of this is what works and this is what doesn't work. You'll hear another title mentioned sometimes, a systems architect. That's the pinnacle, all the way at the top. Like when you've been in the career field 10, 15 years, you not only know how to build up these environments, you know how to design them from scratch and how to make things optimal and efficient and go into old environments and retrofit them to be optimal and efficient. So it's a different kind of role. And let's match this up to certifications here. I'm going to go over to Microsoft's website. Microsoft has a number of credentials in this space. And so when you go to Microsoft's website to learn about certifications, they have their applied skills. I'll call them certifications here, but they're badges. Those are fairly new, and they're not well recognized amongst HR departments. So if there's a hiring agent that's out there and looks at your resume and they see a bunch of these applied skills on there, one day they'll catch on and these will be meaningful things. But today they just kind of get lost in the blur. But if you keep going down, you'll get to the Microsoft certifications, and these are recognized by hiring agents. So when your resume shows that you have certain Microsoft certifications, that'll be more meaningful to them. And when we go into the certifications, they're broken down into all sorts of different categories. And I'm just going to filter this down. As I scroll down, you'll see like beginner, intermediate, advanced, and I'll choose beginner. And on the beginner side, you'll see all these fundamental ones that pop up. Microsoft Azure fundamentals. That means, can I go into the Microsoft Azure cloud and set up basic services? Can I get that type of environment functioning? You'll see Dynamics, that's financial CRM. We've got security, compliance, and identity fundamentals. If you're wanting to get into cybersecurity, these are like your entry level certifications to show you're ready to get in there. Well, if I bump that over, I'm going to go to administrator and I'm going to, here we can start right here. Microsoft 365 certified fundamentals, right? This is for setting up the Microsoft 365 environment. That would be email accounts and OneDrive, SharePoint, all the various services that users use. Those run on top of servers. Those servers you can run yourself, or you can just buy them through Microsoft 365, where Microsoft does most of the management. But you still need a systems administrator to control access, to configure the system the way you need it. This is the type of work that a system admin would do. And these certifications are how you get ready to prove that. If you have no job experience, who's going to hire you? If you say, I'm ready to be a sysadmin, you've got no experience. All right, well, maybe you have a degree in computer science. I'm going to go off on a tangent here, Sophie, because let's talk about degrees for just a minute. College degrees, incredibly valuable. If you want to move into management, it's expected that you are going to have a college degree. You'll hear a lot of IT people saying degrees aren't important anymore. They're usually talking about developers, right? There is a trend right now with developers, software engineers, where software degrees or college degrees aren't as important as they used to be. But in the sysadmin, infrastructure world, in the DBA world, like in that world, degrees are still important. And if you want to move up to be even a help desk manager, become a systems engineer, it's expected that you're going to have a degree to get into those management levels. But for the rank and file sysadmins, it's not necessary. But you need something. You need experience or certifications to show you know how to do the job. And that's where certifications like these come in. And that's really a big staple of what we do with IT Pro is our library is made up of a lot of skills. Just here's hands-on skills. You can learn how to do something, but here's certification training so that you can prove that you know how to do something, right? I got my Microsoft certification, my Cisco certification, Apple, Linux, whatever it is. I got a certification. So when I go to a hiring agent, I can prove I'm not just saying I'm ready to be a sysadmin, I can prove it. And that's what's important to get all that fit together.
We actually got a question here that kind of has to do a lot with what you just talked about. It's a Zoom user that is asking a pretty specific question. Don, if I was to apply to work for you today for IT Pro, would you see more value in a focused degree in information technology and engineering or a few certifications that prove my knowledge?
So it's a tough one. I'll tell you why this is tough. It shouldn't be tough, right? I should be able to say, like, to me, the focus certifications are going to be more valuable. I can look and see here's the skills you have, and and it's all about being ready on your first day of work, right? On your first day of work, if you've got certifications, those are vendor specific. You've learned a skill. You know how to perform a certain task. I would likely be able to give you things to do on day one. So those focus certifications are going to typically be more meaningful to me, assuming that those focus certifications are in what I use, right? If you are Cisco certified, but I've got a server room full of Juniper hardware, all of a sudden that certification's half as valuable as it was. Because I say half because you learn a lot of fundamentals in theory, routing protocols, OSPF. OSPF works the same on a Cisco router as it does on a Juniper router, right? So the fundamentals are there, but how you implement it is different. And if you don't know those commands, it's going to make it harder for you day one. And I'm sure you'd come up to speed soon enough. A college degree is different. College degrees tend to be vendor neutral. They try not to get too embedded with one vendor. Now they do. You'll oftentimes find Cisco training or various other things embedded in them, which is a great thing to do. If you can do both, like that's the perfect solution. If you can get certifications and a degree, you're going to be in the best shape. But not everybody's got the time or resources to do that. But what a degree shows is a few things. One, that you certainly know the fundamentals and the theory behind what you need to do to perform the job, but you don't necessarily have the hands-on skill, the practical application of that skill. So you're going to need a little bit more time to ramp up in that career. You need a little mentoring and coaching to get there. The other thing it shows, and this is not official, I think the colleges don't like it when I say this, but a college degree shows you're willing to learn things you don't want to, because they have a lot of requirements. I remember, like, when I was in college, I had to do a foreign language. I didn't want to learn one, but I had to. It was like a forced requirement from the school. And the ability to learn is a skill that's really hard to pick up later in life. Some people are really good at learning. Some people aren't. And a degree kind of shows that you're good at learning, or you're at least capable of doing it. So going back, because I don't want to muddy the question too much. I don't want to sound like I'm dodging it, right? So if you have focused certifications in the technologies that I use in my environment, that's going to be more valuable to me, right? If you have focused certifications with technologies that I'm not using, it's going to carry about the same weight as a college degree. Until we start getting up to management level, that's when that college degree becomes more important. And that's just the way the industry is built, and that's the way that it works right now.
So I guess if you have in mind a specific company that you want to work for this company and apply there, maybe do some research to see if you can figure out what kind of technologies they're using.
Yeah, and that used to be easy. It used to be you could call up a company and you could just ask them, like, "Hey, I'd really love to work there. What vendor do you guys use for your networking gear, or what operating system you guys use for your servers?" In today's world, with the cybersecurity threat landscape that we have, most companies don't want to tell you that anymore. So it may be hard to figure it out, but I'll give you a suggestion, which is go on LinkedIn, look for people that work at the company, and you can always reach out and ask, or you can just throw a message on Twitter or social media. It's not called Twitter anymore, X. It's hard to say that one, but reach out, and you'd be surprised. The community out there, the IT community, is pretty friendly in general, and you may be able to get a leg up and figure that out. The other option is try and be diverse with your certifications. People come to me and say, "Don, should I focus on Linux or should I focus on Windows?" And I say, if you can, learn both, right? I use Macs, Windows, Linux PCs every single day, so I'm constantly moving between the three, and that it gives you a great base of knowledge. You don't necessarily want to get pigeonholed unless you're ready to make that career. If you say, I want to be a Linux administrator, that's the job I want, then yeah, focus in, but know that not every company is going to be a good fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And you're right about the community being pretty open and welcoming and wanting to help. It's a lot of people that want to help other people. So do you mind if we have a few more questions? I know
No,
we
yeah,
have some other
let's tackle,
jobs.
and I'll just mention this to you guys in the chat room. Don't hesitate to throw the questions in. Yeah, sometimes we do the Q&A at the end. I like to just do it right here in the webinar. So throw the questions in. We'll get to as many as we can.
All right. Well, we've got a question from Vespa who's watching on Zoom. And this is interesting because we've talked about certifications, we've talked about entry level stuff, but Vespa works as an IT technician currently, and their company just told them they wanted them to get certs. So is it worth it starting at the ground level for an A plus cert, or would that be a waste of their time?
So it depends on your knowledge. If you've if you've already got experience in things that are beyond A plus, you can skip A plus. A plus is very much a cert that helps you get that first job, right? Once you've got a job, once you're in your IT career, you're usually going to want to shoot for things that are higher than that. Okay, but the certs that are higher than A plus expect you to already know all the things in A plus. So let me run through real quick, kind of like a little hierarchy of certifications. I mentioned IT fundamentals. That's a great way just to figure out what career field you want to go into. If you want to be a DBA, you want to do databases, you just skip A plus altogether. It's not relevant. It doesn't apply to being a database administrator. And so you go and you start focusing on the various databases that are out there. But if you want to go into help desk, sysadmin, so on, cybersecurity, there's parts of A plus that apply to all of those. But then after A plus is when you really start to specialize. Are you going to go into network infrastructure? Network plus is really good for that. Even sysadmins benefit from network plus. If you're going to be a sysadmin, is it Linux you're after? Linux plus is really good for that, or the LPIC certifications. If you're going to be a Windows administrator, the Microsoft certifications are where you want to end up. And if you're going to be a Mac administrator, the Apple ACSP program, which is super flaky, but it's all there is. So that's your one option, and you go that route, and you get kind of trained up in the Mac world. If you want to go into cybersecurity, Security Plus is that logical next step, and then you have to make the decision of, do I want to go the hands-on way, or do I want to go the compliance way, and figure out where you want your career to fork from there. So there's decisions that have to be made. If Vespa is already in an IT technician role, A plus is designed to show that you've got the equivalent of 6 months, or actually I think they changed it to 1 year of hands-on experience doing help desk and desktop support. You likely already have that on your resume. So the A plus certification is really just proving you have something you've already got on your resume. So if you're confident in that knowledge and you're ready to move to the next level, you're at that stage. I would say move to the next level. Pick certifications that are going to advance your skills if you've already got a job, and that's going to help you get that promotion. If you don't have a job, that's when you need certifications that prove the skills you have right now. But once you've got a job, you want certifications that are moving you forward. And I don't think A plus would move you forward from where you're at.
Now, for people that truly are breaking into this field for the first time, they're currently searching for jobs. We have a user watching from YouTube. Louise wants to know they apply to so many jobs, but they don't hear back. So, how do they stand out?
Oh my goodness. All right. So there's not a great way to say this, but it's a hard time to get a job right now, right? A lot of tech companies have done layoffs in 2023. And that means there's a lot of people that's out there in the market. Now, most of them have been developers. If you look at the layoffs that have been happening across the various, the massive corporations like Google, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever, all of them, it's mostly developers that have been laid off, developers and project managers. And so there's a glut of those types of people in the market right now. Well, what's happening is there's only so many jobs in that role. And so you've got them now starting to apply for jobs outside of that role. So it might be somebody who's been a developer for 10 years, but they're applying for a sysadmin role or even for help desk roles just to get a job, to be making some money while they continue to look for that next career. And that makes it hard. That makes it hard to get your resume noticed and to get up in a stack. If there's 1,000 applicants, it's hard to get yours noticed, right? So there's a few things you can do about that. There's actually a number of tricks of the trade. We have career advisors that actually help people to figure out what they need to do to get the resume noticed. But a couple of things I'll tell you. First off, the easiest way to get your resume noticed is to apply for jobs in the local area, right? Right now, with the world of remote work and the international angle of technology, when somebody posts a job online, they'll get applicants from all over the world. And they will always look at local applicants first because for companies, it's actually hard to hire people outside of the state that you're in. There's all sorts of tax law and compliance. And if it's international, it's even harder. So applying for companies in the same city you live in or within your commute distance, whatever you're comfortable commuting, those are going to be the ones where it's the easiest for you to get noticed because they'll see right away you're in the local area, and every company prefers that. After that, it's a matter of keeping your resume as concise as possible. And I'm going to give you advice that you've probably heard before and you probably hate. I hated it, which is you shouldn't just have one resume. Your resume should be tailored for every job you apply for. Now, if you're one of those people that applies for 1,000 jobs, that means you'd have to have 1,000 resumes, and that's a nightmare. But that's a choice you made. So you'd have to deal with it. But if I'm applying for a help desk role, a help desk manager role, a sysadmin role, I need to tailor my resume to match the skills and things that apply to that job. I'm not saying lie about skills. I'm saying look at your skills and make sure you're presenting what's most relevant to that particular career. If you've got 5 certifications, make sure you're highlighting the one that aligns with that job the most. And your general skills block, you should have a block in your resume that says, here's my general capabilities. You should be highlighting the skills that apply to that role and what you bring to that job to make a difference. And really, your resume, most of the time, they're only going to look at the front page. You might have a 5-page resume. They're only going to look at that first page. And so you need everything meaningful right there in that first page. And then on the back of the page, you can have more if you have other pages, whatever. But that front one, that's your first impression. And so you've got to make you got to make a meaningful impact. If you're just going on Dice or Monster or LinkedIn and just throwing out your resume and saying, here, I'll just submit and see what happens, you're likely going to get lost in the shuffle. Just so many other applicants that are out there. So you've got to make yours meaningful.
I'm curious what your take is on this because I've heard that along the lines of tailoring your resume, it's good to look at the job post itself and look for keywords. So if I have on my resume that I'm great with, collaboration, but the word they use in their job posting is teamwork. It's the same thing, it's just a different word. So I'm not lying, but if I change it to teamwork, that might be a word that they look for and it stands out to them. Does that sound right?
That is great advice. And also if they're saying things like they want you to support Juniper routers, but you support Cisco routers, you need to highlight the technologies inside of there that would match between them. So, kind of translating your resume to that career. Yeah, great advice.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad I can bring something to the table here. We've got quite a few more questions. This one comes to us from Mosh, who's watching on YouTube. Mosh says, I'm currently in desktop support and I enjoy it, but I need more of a challenge and most importantly, more pay. So what roles should I look into?
All right. Path of least resistance would be sysadmin roles, right? That's that logical next step. Most people go from supporting the desktop to supporting the servers, right? Or the network infrastructure. Some companies will allow you to go straight into cybersecurity, but normally the way the progression works is you go help desk, and then it splits up into infrastructure and servers. And then from there, it comes back to cybersecurity, right? So, people have been in the career for 5 to 10 years at that point when they understand the systems enough. You need to defend systems for a while to learn how to break into systems. That's the way it's usually looked at. So that would be the path of least resistance for you, is if you're interested in networking or if you're interested in server support, go that route. Now, personally, if I were in your position right now, server support, but more specifically cloud services, that's the real growth industry, a place where you're going to find jobs. It's not going away anytime soon. And I know there's AWS, there's Google Compute, and there is Microsoft Azure. They're all really big, but AWS and Azure are really the two biggest, and AWS is the biggest. So, pick one, start to learn it and advance. Now, if your company doesn't use a cloud service, then what you're basically saying is, I'm in help desk now. I'm going to learn this new skill and go work somewhere else, right? Otherwise, you need to look at your business right now and say, what does my business use for their servers? Are they in Azure? Are they AWS? Are we on-prem? Do we have our own data center? And if we do, what do those systems run? Start learning that, and then that way you can apply for those positions. And then, little word of advice here. It used to be that IT people would, they call it turnover, right? Where you'd leave one job to go somewhere else. And the average turnover was like 2 years for a while. It's not like that anymore. People are getting into IT jobs and they're staying in there long term. So if you're waiting for a job to open up at a higher level in your organization, you might have to wait a long time. Don't hesitate to talk to the manager of that team or talk to HR and say, I'm really interested in that job. What can I do to help out? Could they use me where maybe I'm working a 40-hour work week, but I spent 8 hours with that team and the rest of the hours of my current team? And you'd be surprised to find how many organizations are willing to do that. And now you've got a foot in the door. And the next time a position opens up, it's not, hey, we got to post the position and you can apply. It's, hey, instead of working 8 hours on this team, now you're working 40 hours on this team, and now you're a part of it. That is a very common thing in the corporate world. Don't hesitate to ask a team if you can contribute. Now, you make sure your manager is okay with it.
Yeah, of course. You want to better to ask permission in this case rather than forgiveness. Well, I know that you had mentioned earlier that there are quite a few specializations you can get into because
Sure.
IT is a pretty broad field. We have somebody here, Abed Al-Aziz, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who's watching on Zoom, and they say they're a second-year cybersecurity student. They've taken courses like Google Cybersecurity and CompTIA A+. So what other important courses do they need because they want to be a pen tester?
All right. If you want to be a pen tester, so a couple of things. And I've talked to tons of people that are penetration testers. I've been to numerous conferences. We do a lot of work with Black Hills Information Security and other organizations that are out there that do pen testing. So I've heard advice and recommendations for a number of people that were pen testers. So I am not a pen tester myself, so I'll do my disclaimer here. But the best thing you can do to get into being a pen tester is if you can find some way to be an apprentice, have a mentor, have somebody take you under their wing and coach you and lead you through that. Now, honestly, most people will never have an opportunity to do that. It's very, very difficult to find a pen tester who's willing to take on an apprentice because they're dealing with sensitive data. And you can't have somebody unskilled with access to sensitive data. It's tough. So there's a lot of regulatory compliance reasons that doesn't happen, and then just the logistics of doing it. So, but I want to mention it because if you find yourself in that opportunity, you always need to say yes to that. Yeah, jump on that because that's the best way to do it. Now, if you're like everybody else though, and that's not on your plate, then there's a few things you can do. I made a comment a minute ago. I said that you need to know how to defend a network before you can go and attack it. Most people will start by defending networks. And that's why when you look at like CompTIA's certifications, they've got the CISA Plus and the Pen Test Plus. And if you just kind of skim over their objectives, there's a lot of overlap between the two, and you might wonder why there's both. Well, pen test, that's penetration testing, right? You're trying to break into a network. CISA, that's cybersecurity analyst. You're looking at a network and finding ways to secure it. You're defending. In the cybersecurity world, they're called red teams and blue teams, right? Red teams are the attackers, blue teams are the defenders. Well, in the IT career world, I don't have a fixed number here with me, but it's something like 4-to-1, the jobs, that there's 4 defenders for every 1 attacker that's out there. So you get into the defense world, you have to learn how to defend your network. Well, to defend the network, you need to know the tools the attackers are using. And so you learn the tools the attackers are using. Now you're able to leverage them both ways as a defender and an attacker, and you're able to transition into that role of being a pen tester. There's a number of places that do that. The U.S. Air Force, where they have their cybersecurity command, they have entire platoons that are defense and platoons that are offense, and it's a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 ratio on those. Let me bring up a couple of job titles here just to show you, though. When it comes to cybersecurity, there's several different job roles that are out there, and pen tester is just one of them, right? You also have things like network or system security administrators. These are the blue teamers. These are people who are defending networks or defending servers. Network security engineers, a little bit more higher end. So this is going to be all encompassing servers and routers, firewalls, and so on. Data security analyst, that's more focused on databases and just PII. Anywhere you store personally identifiable information, it needs to be secure. A data security analyst is going to be one who focuses on that. Security architect, that's almost up at the pinnacle of the career, designing security for entire organizations. And then you get into like system security managers. I left off things like CISO and those higher titles. Those are not early in your career. All of these are different job titles that you hear about in the cybersecurity world. And if you're interested in becoming a pen tester, you'll usually hold one of these jobs first before you make that jump. Now, I keep saying things like usually and probably, and that's because you can skip ahead. You can skip the line. There's no rule with pen testers because it's a hacker type job, and you've got a skill that is not really, I mean, it's trained, the fundamentals are trained to you, but then you've got to be innovative on top of that and creative. And so there are plenty of people that just go straight into pen testing because they've got a mind for that. They can look at software and they can think, here's how I can break that. Here's how I can make it work the wrong way and take advantage of that. And those people are really successful. But, think like Mr. Robot, where the guy, he just kind of had that talent. Not all of us just have that talent. Some of us have to work hard for things. And in those cases, you're going to move through these other careers first.
It's good to have that caveat there that usually there is kind of a process you'll follow, but yeah, if you've got that innate ability, your path may look a little bit different. That's all. So for those of you that don't know, ACI Learning, the I obviously is representative of IT, that C is for cybersecurity, but the A in ACI Learning stands for audit. And we have a question here from an internal auditor. Emily wants to know if you have any recommendations on an IT field for an internal auditor to transition into.
You know, IT auditors are super important, right? And I actually deal with compliance on a regular basis. We're actually in the middle of an ISO 27001 audit right now. That's what I was doing before this webinar started. It's super important. The world of IT audit is not as well defined as the world of like financial audit, where there's organizations that really dictate exactly how that's supposed to work. On the IT side, infrastructure is so disparate. There's so many different systems that are out there that it's not like there's one specific training program for it. Some universities are working to fix that. So we're starting to see some university programs that are built around IT audit. But what's more useful, if you're learning a skill, if you're trying to break into that field, is to not focus so much on a certification, but to focus on a regulation. The more you can learn about GDPR, ISO 27001, ISO 27701, SOC 2, SOC 2 Type 2 reporting, that stuff, those right there are probably the four most common IT regulations right now that companies are having to cater towards. PCI compliance, PCI DSS, the payment card industry. I realize I'm throwing out a bunch of acronyms here. I don't know how deep I want to go into these, but when you learn those, most companies will have an initiative. The company will say, I want this company to be ISO 9000 certified. I want this company to be ISO 27001 certified. And that's where they start bringing in IT auditors. It's rare that you have a company that says, I just want somebody to audit the network. Just take a look at things. Tell me how it looks. That doesn't really happen. So usually companies are saying, here's my goal. I want a clean SOC 2 Type 2 report. SOC 2 Type 2 is a IT security infrastructure report where it measures a ton of things, like 53 different objectives. And it then says whether you pass or fail on those things. And if you fail, here's what was wrong and here's what you did to fix it. Companies love to have a clean one where it says they passed everything. Well, they need somebody to come and look at what they're doing, how they're handling support tickets, how they're tracking assets, how they manage VPN credentials, how people gain access to bank accounts and who's allowed to transfer money. All of that stuff is inside of a SOC 2 report, and they need somebody who understands the ins and outs of SOC 2 to then come in and basically create that type of report for the organization. Now, you can't create your own. You still need to get an external organization to come in and certify all that. They'll do an external audit. An external auditor is usually somebody who started as an internal auditor and then transitioned to external. And so you'll see a lot of our training in the Audit Pro library, the on ACI Learning is built that way. You'll see internal audit versus external audit. And so you'll want to focus on the internal side and helping companies like check their boxes for various compliance regulations, and then you switch over to external, and that's where the real money is. You're out there going to different companies and really making a big difference there. So that's typically the way that it's handled.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I like when we get questions like that are a little more unique. We don't see questions like that very often. And Emily, if you are interested in any of our other audit content, we actually have an audit webinar next week with Hernan Murdoch. So you might want to tune in for that. That might have some useful information for you as well.
Yeah, and let me add to that, Sophie. If you've never considered audit before, right? I'm sure there are some of you that are out there that are thinking, "Oh, compliance! Oh, what a nightmare." There are some people who are just super passionate about compliance, right? Most people aren't. Most people view it as like this nightmare they have to deal with. But let me tell you, it is such a rewarding career field for you to be able to look at an organization and say, not only have we shown the company how to do this work, we've created the policies and procedures, but I can prove that they're following it. This company is better off because of the compliance program. That's a rewarding thing. Like, you can show you've done something. Versus over in the sysadmin world, there can be times where you're like, hey, if I'm doing my job right, the servers are running along, everything's going smooth, people forget I'm here. But in compliance, the whole company gets a big stamp, a big check mark. They put it on the website. Hey, we're ISO 27001 certified. It's a very rewarding career field to be in.
This is another question that is a little bit different than what we usually see, a little more specific. Ryan wants to know, he's working from home for themselves from home, securing people's home computers or hands-on fixed computers, etc. If that's what he wants to do, would certs be enough for him to do that?
I would say yes, for something like that. Now, I just want to qualify here. If you are doing cybersecurity work and you're working for yourself, you need to make sure you understand the liability that you're taking on, right? There is an actual liability where if you say, hey, I'm going to connect and secure your network, and then there's a breach, you could potentially get sued. So if you work for yourself, you could always get sued. Like, that's just how the world works, right? It's unfortunate, but it's the truth. So just be aware of that. But aside from that, when you're reaching out to individuals, typically they need to have trust in you to know that, one, you're going to do what you say, and two, that you've got the skills to do it. Now, when it's a one-on-one relationship, it's just you talking to another person, like a regular consumer, not a business or an enterprise, establishing that trust may not even require certifications. You might just be able to say, here's my list of references. Here's 3 other people you can call, and you can ask them how I did. And they'll vouch for me, or get some testimonials or whatever. LinkedIn has a great system for that, where you can get endorsements from other people. And if you've got enough endorsements, that may well be enough. And you don't need certifications or anything. You can grow by word of mouth. People hear about your skills, they hear about it from other people, and then you go from there. That is a viable way. But if they've never met you before, you're Joe Blow off the streets, they've never met you, and they don't want to call any references, certifications are a great way to show and build that trust and say, hey, I'm CompTIA certified, I'm Microsoft certified, I'm whatever certification is that you hold. They can then look up that certification if they've never heard of it and say, oh, wow, this person has actually been trained, they have passed a test, so they show. I take my car to the mechanic, and I don't know anything about auto mechanic. I can change my own oil, but that's about it. But if I see that they're ASE certified, right, that tells me, hey, at least they went to some kind of school. They got a certification, so they've at least been trained versus, somebody who just has a shirt with their name on it. That's not exactly enough credential for me to work on the car.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that we were able to kind of answer that, because it is a little more specific. So hopefully that helps you out, Ryan. And Don, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball here. We've got a different segment than what we usually do. So
Okay.
let's take a look. Now, if you're familiar with our webinars here, we've been doing this segment for the past couple of months called Rapid Fire. So we've still got quite a few questions on the board. And if you haven't submitted a question yet, go ahead and do that now. Don, you're going to have 30 seconds to answer each question. I believe you'll hear a sound in your ear if we hit that time
Okay,
limit.
no rambling. Got it.
No rambling. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, we'll jump right in with the first question. Comes from David. In addition to PMP courses, what courses do you recommend for prospective employees who want to manage IT-centric DoD weapon systems programs?
Wow.
Going off with a bang.
CISSP would be the next one that makes a lot of sense because it goes a bit beyond PMP and covers some really important stuff as far as like managing the organization. DoD specifically, ITIL is actually a pretty useful one, but I'd go CISSP over that because of the security implications. It's also on the DoD's 8570 list, so it's probably a requirement for that job.
Wow, I really thought I was going to get you with that one, but he handled that with grace. This one comes to us from Ronald. Ronald wants to know, what would be a good area for someone that has a law degree looking to make a career change? I was a sysadmin for a few years prior to my legal career.
Boy, so legal, there is there's probably the jobs you want, and you should certainly pursue those. But if you're just looking to make money, let me tell you, compliance, GDPR, there's a whole thing around where companies get hacked and they don't know what to do. They don't understand what their obligations are under the law. And having a lawyer who's in IT who can tell them, under GDPR, you got to notify your customers in under 72 hours and stuff like that, that would be really valuable, and I'd pay for it.
Wow, I'm impressed. This one comes to us from Jason watching on YouTube. Are there specific programming languages or technologies that newcomers to IT should focus on?
You will hear a lot of people go into Python because Python is such a flexible language. It can be used for system administration. It can also just be used for building applications, and it runs on multiple operating systems. Python's a pretty good one to get started with. There are other languages that might be more valuable, but people will typically start with Python, learn the basics of programming, and then jump into other languages from there.
Well, Jason's got another question for you. Can you share some insights into emerging fields within IT that might present promising career opportunities?
You're going to hear a lot of people talk about data analytics and AI, machine learning, and so on. Those are typically built around science degrees that come out of universities, so not exactly something they want to get started on. Cloud security is a growing field that I think I wouldn't call it emerging anymore. It's like a real need that just most people aren't doing really well with. So that would be the one that I think is probably the biggest shining example.
All right, this one comes to us from Louise. Louise wants to know, can you also get into compliance things like health security compliance with only certifications? Louise's background is in public health.
You can, but it's hard to prove that you know that certification. So like, let's say you mentioned health security, right? So HIPAA, that's the big one. You might have HIPAA memorized, which would be an amazing feat. But how do you prove to somebody you've got that knowledge, that you know HIPAA inside and out and you can help them be compliant? That's going to be a tough one. You might have to do an internship with somebody in order to get something on your resume that's able to prove that. There's not a good certification that can prove that.
Well, next one up says, how do you plan to stay updated on the latest trends and technologies in the rapidly evolving field of IT?
You have to be careful because sometimes those cutting edge things, they make it, sometimes they don't. So you don't want to go on a big fork learning something, then it just goes away in 2 years. I would say that monitoring the news, staying on top of the industry that way. If you haven't been there, the Hacker News website on Y Combinator, you'll see tons of people that are posting about technologies they're using that are really cutting edge. And maybe 1 out of 5 makes it past year 3, but at least you learn about them and you see what's out there.
Well, if you want to get weekly highlights on tech news, I recommend TechNado as well. It's a pretty cool podcast. You can find it on our YouTube channel. Just saying, you might want to check that out. We cover the news in a fun way.
We do.
This one comes to us from Sherrard. Sherrard wants to know, I want to be in cyber. I have Sec Plus and ITIL, and I've been told Help Desk is next. Should I shoot for System Admin after? Any certs for that?
Sure. If you've already got Security Plus, you might even be able to skip past the Help Desk. Security Plus is not easy. And so it's rare for me to see somebody who's like skipped A plus, Net plus, just gone straight to Security Plus. So you may well be able to go straight into sysadmin type role, or if you want to go into that blue team role where you're taking that first cybersecurity job with Security Plus and ITIL, you're likely ready to do that.
Well, that's going to bring us to the end of our rapid fire segment. I have a question for you though, Don. What is your favorite part about your job?
The favorite part about my job is when something works, right? when somebody goes to perform an action, like watch a video on the website or take a practice exam and everything works flawlessly and they don't even think about the technology. That's when I know my job is done. Things have worked right. We've got things that are in place. I enjoy that.
What a wonderful answer. Thank you for humoring me there, Don. That brings us to the end of our rapid fire segment. We were able to get through all of our questions, which is a feat for us. So I'm excited we were able to do that. But before we wrap up the show, do you have any final advice, Don?
Yeah, don't get discouraged. The job market is very cluttered right now. It is a hard time to get your resume noticed right here at the beginning of 2024. Don't get discouraged. Keep getting your applications out there. If you don't have a job, if you're unemployed right now, your job is to get a job, right? So every day you need to be setting aside hours. You work 9 to 5, sending out resumes, creating custom resumes, getting your name out there. Keep trying, right? And sometimes you might have to take a job. Maybe you are a sysadmin, but you've got to take a help desk job because it's the only thing that's available. Do it. At least you show that you're doing work, and then keep looking for that next job that's out there. If you're already in a job, well, you might want to sit back and rest on your laurels. Don't. IT changes too fast. Your certifications may only be relevant for 3 to 5 years. You need to be thinking about that next thing. Keep learning, keep getting certified. Don't stop because you're setting a time limit on your career.
A lot of great words of encouragement, advice, and insights from somebody that's got a lot of experience in this field. Thank you so much for providing us with some of your insights today, Don. We appreciate your time. I've had a lot of fun. Have you had fun?
Yeah, I always like talking about this. IT is a really rewarding career field, and I love to see more people get into it.
Well, that's going to do it for our show today. Keep in mind, Thursdays are webinar days at ACI Learning. So every other Thursday, pretty much, we've got a webinar going on. We've got a new episode of Technado coming out today as well, so check that out. But until next time, for Don Pezet, I'm Sophie Goodwin, and we'll see you next time.